your blue skies. I miss your clear blue skies and drinking water streams. I miss your mountains. I miss your sunrise and your watercolor scenes. Ooh, Alaska, I'm coming home. I'm coming home.
For 6 years, Jay Hammond and his crew have journeyed across Alaska. Down the trail, they met over 68 unique Alaskans doing unusual, uplifting, often courageous things in a land they trade for no other. As a pilot, commercial fisherman, writer, homesteader, and former governor, Jay's life mirrors the character and spirit of those Alaskans who have carved out a life to their own design. Alaskam is proud to have sponsored the Jay Hammond's Alaska series, an enduring tribute to the grandeur of Alaska's land and the warmth of its people. Join us for a celebration of the wonderful people who call Alaska home.
Alaska, I'm coming home.
How about that? Lake Clark is arguably one of the handsomest pieces of real estate in all of Alaska. I plead guilty of prejudice, of course, since I live here. And one of the most interesting Lake Clark people is the patriarch who founded this place. This is Port Alsworth, named after pioneer bush pilot Babe Alsworth. Though he's 78 now, Babe is still flying and teaching others to fly.
Yep. Clear.
I've been flying about 2 years. Shortly after I moved out here, I started flying. Babe actually gave me some of my first lessons a few years ago, and probably not anybody that has more experience than Babe does around here. He has thousands of hours flying this country, all kinds of weather.
Okay, now give it all the power.
Kind of a quiet instructor, just kind of motions to you what you're supposed to be doing, doesn't really yell at you very much, and kind of lets you go a long ways. Just sometimes you wonder if you're not getting in trouble, but it seems to bring you out all the time.
I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to learn, you know?
You, of course, had been flying for a number of years before you came to Alaska. Tell me a little bit about your background. You came from Minnesota, I understand.
I learned to fly in 1930 and flew throughout that whole area in Minnesota. My father wasn't the least bit interested in airplanes. I got my first one and hid it behind the haystacks.
Babe, what brought you up here in the first place and when?
In 1939, because of the need up here for pilots, I rode up to Chamber of Commerce in Anchorage there, and they wrote back and said if I had a commercial pilot license and could stay sober, that I wouldn't have any problem. I like the country. A lot of people live all around the world, you know, they can't even imagine the activity here in aircraft.
Babe can lay claim to a fair share of that activity, over 40,000 hours worth. That's the equivalent of almost 5 years in the air. Some of those hours were spent teaching his offspring at a rather tender age.
I probably started handling the controls of the airplane when I was about 6, 7 years old. And then from then on...
Didn't solo until a couple of years later. Huh?
Yeah, I soloed at 12, right here on the bay on the glare ice with a little T-craft.
Well, a little younger than I should have, about 14.
Well, I'd say.
That's actually a late bloomer compared to the other kids, though.
And it was kind of fun, kind of exciting. The airplane almost got away from me a couple times, but it was fun.
Then I took off quite shakily and flew around the patch and landed and come back to shore, and he was sitting on a gas drum and never said a word. I pulled into shore, and he just helped turn around and tie it up, and walked to the house and went to cutting wood. Never mentioned it to anybody.
Did you find Babe's techniques any different or unusual?
Oh, yes.
How so?
The first thing he does when he gets in the airplane is he takes out the dual sticks. So you're the only one that has a stick, and I don't know of any instructor that does that.
So you got to learn, huh?
You got to do all the flying.
My kids mentioned that, you know. He said, it's pretty good having Grandpa teach us how to fly. And I says, why? He said, well, he just sits there and lets you go, and he says once you learn, you really got it.
The psychological effect, at least, was that the beginning student is the pilot in command immediately.
Once he gets done with it, he can land on a Band-Aid.
Have you ever seen him become completely unglued, become angry, or blow his stack, or panic at all, or come close to it?
No, I've never ever seen him come close.
No.
No, he'd just grab it, straighten it out, and give it back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An example of Babe's unflappable calm occurred mid-landing when an engine cowling flap gave way.
Just make sure you don't. That's right. Pull the throttle back.
Babe, you've put in thousands of hours of flying, and yet I seem to recall that you've had virtually no accidents whatsoever.
Well, I just wouldn't report them, Joe.
Babe takes life a little slower these days, tending his garden and wintering in Hawaii. But after 50 years of piloting the often not-so-friendly skies of Alaska, he's earned it.
Freedom, oh man, people don't appreciate freedom. And I've always had it, but I tell you, you know, it says in the Bible, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom.
And Babe Alsworth is one man who knows where to find it. Certainly a large part of my Alaskan life is revolved around, over, and sometimes crashed into politics. Most who enter that dubious field actually believe they can make a difference. However, few do. One who did was my old friend and legislative colleague, Clem Tillion. Clem,
well, I'd like to see you carrying something. I wouldn't want the feet to get soft.
How you doing? No series about colorful Alaskans would be complete without a trek across the resource-rich waters of Kachemak Bay to the Tillion family spread at Halibut Cove. Clem's fished these waters for years and found time in the off-season to represent this area in the state legislature for nearly 2 decades. Known to his colleagues in the House as Reptilian, whether in reverence, respect, or revulsion, Clem's country bumpkin demeanor deluded many into underestimating his striking range and potency. And those who sparred with this feisty redhead soon found they'd clobbered Clem's fist with their nose.
Be careful now.
And all the blood spilled was their own. Now, with political office behind him, Clem and his family are living the kind of lifestyle most only dream of, in a setting as beautiful as can be found anywhere. Most Alaskans have a dream of the lifestyle they'd like to lead. Well, here in Halibut Cove, a few miles by boat from Homer on the Kenai Peninsula, Clem Tillion and his wife Diana have lived their Alaskan dream for almost 40 years.
Oh my God, I don't want to buy anything.
How are you, Jim? Halibut Cove is a picture postcard sort of place. Quaint homes fronted by mirror calm waters and blessed with a backdrop of snow-covered peaks. It's kind of a kingdom, really. And Tillion's the monarch. He owns much of the land. He sells a parcel, of course, now and then, but only on the other side of the cove, and then only to buyers he deems acceptable. The only inhabitants to occupy space on Clem's side of the water is all family, and he plans to keep it that way.
We just systematically sat down and started arranging to dispose of property over on the mainland and down the other end of the island to people we knew and liked. And
so you don't have to hire any sort of a watchman for your place. The people take care of each other's.
Oh, everybody watches everybody else's. We don't even have a latch on our basement there. It's just, or not a lock. There's no way to lock the house.
It's the way Alaska used to be when we first came up here, I guess.
The understanding we have for all of these places is that no one has title. This is a family trust, one of those life in being trusts, and that way it can't fall into foreign hands through death or divorce.
I've known him since the days we together prowled the halls of the legislature looking for trouble, and it usually found us. Like too many politicians, I seem to have an inability to use but 10 words when 1,000 will do. Clem, on the other hand, suffers from an inability to mince them.
Well, I've always maintained that all my service in the legislature, too, was self-interest. I have grandchildren, and damn it, there's going to be something left for them. And therefore, we're not going to use it all up now. I'm interested in how many spawners we need, how large the stocks are, how clean the water is. And you can say it's dedicated service, but it's really because I want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren to live in a decent place and have an economy that'll support them.
In 1981, a fire of unknown origin struck while Clem and Diana were away on business. It burned the old house to the ground, but the biggest loss was their granddaughter. Clem has never stopped to dwell on the punches the fates occasionally throw, preferring always to offer ill fortune a moving target. Today, the Tillions live in this multi-storied home, some might call it a castle, containing over 5,000 feet of living space. A lot of people pitched in, you rebuilt.
People came from all over to help, and that's, the house is a gift. You know, it's not one of those things that you've done through your great good fortune or thought or hard work. You know, people came from all over, and sometimes you didn't even know who they were. So it was kind of humbling.
The house was designed within a few days of the tragedy by Diana. It would be an understatement to say that she has an eye for that sort of thing. For over 2 decades, Diana Tillion's unique octopus ink paintings have been sought after from Cordova to Kotzebue. What do we got here?
This is a western sandpiper, and we have many, many of them.
You're using your octopus ink medium.
Yes, this is octopus ink.
What happens if you err, or do you never err?
You change your mind about your composition because it's indelible.
And you get your octopus right here in the cove, right?
Right here in the cove, and it's a true natural color. You don't have to preserve it or do anything to it to save it.
Diana continues to stretch her talents in new directions.
The latest thing is the use of the airbrush. I drew that in because I wanted to make a silkscreen print with octopus ink so I can have something to sell that's a reasonable price.
Use more color.
I would call it a spasm because I'm out of control. But yes, right now I am indeed splashing color around.
My wife sums it up best when she said Alaska, to her, is best compared to childbirth. It's 90% misery, but the other 10% pays it all off. I do not feel at home anywhere else. This is home. You can be downright screwy, and it doesn't make any difference. You know, your neighbor doesn't care if as long as you don't tread on his toes. And you'll find people that don't like each other, but would never think of going to town in the winter without telling even the man they don't like that they're going to town and is there a grocery order.
It's a lifestyle far removed from the downtown din, encroaching to within but a few miles across the water. One of the most refreshing things about Alaska is that it can still provide room for brash, free-thinking individuals like Clem Tillion. Clem, his wife Diana, and their children have been able to mold Halibut Cove into their own personal dream. And thanks to them, Halibut Cove should continue to provide a sampling of its grandeur, mystique, and charm to visitors for years to come. The North Pacific can be most unforgiving. The weather changes rapidly, and all too often, Alaska's fishermen become Mother Nature's pawns or prey. But here on Kodiak Island, one motherly messenger has spent the past 15 years working to improve their odds. Her name is Peggy Dyson.
Hello, all mariners. Hello, all mariners. This is WBH-29 Kodiak. Today is Friday, October 23rd, and the time, 0800 Alaska Daylight Time.
Her voice has become familiar to mariners from Alaska to Japan. Her mission, to protect the members of a huge fishing fleet she regards as family.
Seas 28 feet, subsiding to 10 feet this evening. Rain changing to showers by evening. The outlook is south wind to 25 knots.
For quite some time before Peggy took over, there was, I remember one year there was 17 men lost right here in Kodiak. And I remember again another year there was 21 men lost right here in Kodiak. And Peggy was worried about, well, her husband mainly, to start with.
She was doing this on her own. She'd call the Weather Bureau, find out what the weather was going to be, and call her husband out on the boat. Other guys would call in and ask her what the weather was going to do. And
everybody's eavesdropping.
Yeah, and well, yeah, everybody's listening.
She did this for many years, and finally we had a seminar here at the Fisherman's Hall with the National Marine Weather Service, and Ole Harder and I said, why don't we get these people to put Peggy on the payroll? She's doing the job anyway. She might as well get a little pay for it.
It's the National Weather Service marine forecast valid from present time to 6 a.m. Saturday. And the outlook...
What's a nice girl like you doing in a business like this?
Because I'm married to a fisherman.
Aren't you?
I'm married to a fisherman. I have 2 sons that fish, and this summer I had 3 grandsons that were out in the water. So you can see why I'm where I'm at.
Yeah, you bet. But what began some 15 years ago as a wife's effort to keep her family informed of the weather expanded into much more.
She not only gave us the weather forecast, but she was also responsible for making the weather forecast more accurate because she received at-sea ships on-scene weather conditions and barometric readings, the wind direction, the temperature, the sea conditions, variations of the weather, and those were, she immediately teletyped back into the National Marine Weather Service.
They didn't believe that at first. They used to say, oh, you gotta be kidding me. They don't have 30-foot seas out there. And she'd say, oh, yes, they do. And it took them a while, the National Weather Service, to realize that it was really nasty weather out there. So they believe her now.
To me, she's as valuable as a Coast Guard almost here. You know, it's 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock, come rain or come shine, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, we got Peggy.
If there's a sickness in the family, or if there's an emergency of any kind, if there's a new baby been born, or no matter what the situation is, people call on Peggy, and she gets that announcement back out to the fishermen.
Roger, I just want you to know we got everything that you wanted. It's on the morning plane. It should be down there at 11 o'clock. Over?
My mom's a long ways away in Indiana. She's my Alaskan mom.
Sure.
It's just like you know, Peggy's everybody's mom out there, and, you know, she does want to keep track of her fellows.
I heard her make the remark one time that all those kids out there are my sons. Yeah. She said, I got to take care of all of them.
To Nikolsky for gale warning. Southwest
Peggy's
wind,
known
30
from
knots,
Kodiak to Korea.
becoming northwest.
The chief reason
30
is the
knots this
strength
afternoon.
of the signal that beams from her back bedroom transmitter.
It's such a good radio, you can hear her virtually anywhere that you happen to be in Alaska.
I was anchored up in Nome when I was talking to her. And like I say, I've talked to her from Seattle like she was next door. And I was down the coast of California one time when I heard her.
I contribute that to my neighbor and my friend and my technician, Ab Stewart. He installed my radio, installed the antenna system, and he's kept my radio working for me. And
he evidently fell onto some exact configuration of it, and it worked beyond what anybody thinks it should work.
One of the tugboat skippers had a heart attack, and one of the other crew members got a hold of Peggy and told him to get the Coast Guard on the way, that he's having a serious heart attack. And this crew member went ahead to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and artificial respiration.
And he survived.
And he survived.
I understand his wife later came up here, and tell me a little bit about the aftermath of that.
Well, the wife was concerned about where she could stay or how she could be with her husband, and Peggy said, well, you can come and stay with our house. You're gonna stay with us until your husband gets well.
The fisher folk around these parts think so highly of Peggy Dyson that they've dubbed her First Lady of the Sea. To be sure, her role in rescues and other emergencies is a big part of the reason for their admiration. But I suspect the little things mean just as much.
first, I have to keep up on all the current events because they want to know what's going on in the world. And then, in fact, I probably announced to the whole North Pacific that you became governor the time you became governor, because they want to know what the election results are. That's one of the biggest things. They want to know what the baseball scores are, the football scores, and on down the line. So, several years ago, there was a big super tanker that was going from Tokyo to Nikolsky. He was picking up product over in Nikolsky. And there was a very, very British captain on the tanker that day, and he came over the air and he says, this was right after the weather, so everybody was still listening, and came over the air and he says, I say, Peggy, who shot J.R.? So I knew.
To turn into Peggy twice a day, even though she's calling for storm warnings, which is, I believe, over 64 knots, it's like hearing a little piece of home, like a little piece of reality. And it just feels good just to hear her voice. It's like a little touch of reality. But it's also, it's like giving a little bit of love, unconditional love. And even though you may have never met the person, it just feels good. People just have a good feeling about her.
And you have gone out on a limb upon frequent occasion to almost advance credit or by your own word, support some request of theirs. Has anybody ever let you down?
Not one person. I've loaned guys, I've loaned fellas money, and not one person. I've gone out and bought parts. I've paid electric bills for the fellas. I've done. Not one person has ever let me down.
Here comes Peggy with the weather.
On that radio, you just can't believe it. There's probably a half a dozen men that I've talked to on the radio for at least 12 years or longer. I wouldn't know them if I passed them on the street because they have never had an occasion to come into Kodiak. But the minute you hear their voice on the radio, you can tell so much by voice. And if they ever do come to Kodiak, the first thing they do, I know they'll come knocking on my door, and I'll put my arms around and give them a hug, and they'll hug me, and they'll say, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you, finally." And it's just a bond that you have. It's a different bond and friendship than any other industry there is.
I think they have to put a special box in her post office for her Christmas cards. She so, gets many. there'd be a lot of people in this town wouldn't be alive for her.
If you had just one word to describe Peggy Dyson, what would that word be?
Priceless.
Unselfish.
Love. Pure and simple, unconditional love.
Great gal.
That's 2 words.
Well,
My own experience commercial fishing has been pretty much limited to gill netting salmon in the confines of Bristol Bay. But were I one of this intrepid band of high seas fish farmers plowing the raging waters of the North Pacific, I too would be mighty grateful that in this case at least the bureaucracy chose not some impersonal state-of-the-art robotic weather system, but rather a living, breathing, caring human being like Peggy Dyson. Truly, the First Lady of the Sea.
A trough southwest from the center to Seaguam Island will rotate east to extend from Castle Cape by 6 a.m. Sunday.
Though it may seem an unlikely place to confront royalty, in bypassing the billion-dollar fast food franchises of McDonald's and Burger King, we ran into true royalty recently, right here on 5th Avenue in downtown Anchorage. For here at the White Spot Cafe reigns Burger Queen Lenora Weaver. Lenora, these days of billion burger fast food franchises, don't you feel a little overwhelmed, and how do you cope with that?
Well, it doesn't bother me one bit what they have. I just go along on my little old way. I was here before they were.
For almost 30 years, Queen Lenora has been dispensing a mighty mean hamburger along with coffee with hair in its chest to a host of loyal subjects, some of whom have paid homage to her for years.
If you would have come into her restaurant or this place 30 years ago, it would have been about the same. You couldn't have told the difference. You know, it's old Alaska, actually, and the atmosphere is the same, and you know, you run into nice folks and you don't feel welcomed, I guess.
Well, I don't know. I think it's just the atmosphere. Different kind of folk who come in here is more individual type people who like to patronize a smaller business instead of a chain.
Everybody seems to be pretty friendly when they come in here.
She's great. There's always someone to talk to at the counter.
I try to treat people like I want to be treated myself. I think that means a lot to most people. Because I know I've went into places and they didn't act like they even cared if they waited on you or anything, and they'd just come over and just take your order, not say anything to you or even say hello or anything. But that isn't the way I feel about it. It's just a big family to me.
Lenora's workday begins before most of us have lifted an eyelid.
I have to be down here at 5 o'clock to get ready to set up and be open by 6:15. Well, when I come down, I make coffee, fix the till, fix some lettuce, and then I turn on the stove. A restaurant is just like housework, only it's on a bigger scale. You have to keep your shelves clean, you gotta keep your dishes clean, you gotta keep your stove clean. Seems like it's my life. I've done it for so long that when I'm not working in here, I don't know what to do with myself.
When first learning that her 5th Avenue shop would close down because of rezoning, alarmed patrons with one voice implored, "God save the Queen." We're happy to report that Queen Lenora will continue to hold court and cook burgers at her new location on 4th Avenue, an address I plan to quickly commit to memory.
I was off 6 weeks before I moved over here. And I'd come down here every day just to have something to do. See how they was coming along. I was so happy when they finally got it done so I could open up. And I miss, you know, the people that come in.
It's kind of the old style, you know, the kitchen. We can talk to her, she's cooking. And
she's a good cook.
The best hamburgers in town.
Always a good breakfast. You know, homemade hash browns and well-turned eggs and good sausage, good fresh eggs, good tasting cup of coffee. And that's her biggest attraction, you know, I think, as far as I'm concerned.
The gentleman sitting in the corner, he's
an old-time customer there.
He's been in with me since 60 anyway.
What's that about?
So I haven't poisoned him yet. He's still alive. They come in day after day after day, the same people. They've been coming in since I started in 59. Same people, so I think it's a pretty good recommendation. Something I must be doing something all right. Something that people like. And it makes me feel good inside of myself that I have accomplished something that most people, they don't do it. They quit after they have their own business for real.
Your prices, I note, are relatively modest. Certainly by no means excessive. With all the competition you now have in the fast food chains and turning out hamburgers by the millions, it would seem as though it would be difficult to hold your head above water without raising your prices substantially. How are you able to maintain your relatively low prices?
Well, I've done it on quality. On the amount of food that I put out.
Is speed an important element in your
Yes, it is. Speed is very important because a lot of people only have a half an hour to eat, and so you've got to get those out. I think I put out 19 hamburgers in less than 10 minutes. From 11 o'clock until a quarter of 1, we used 13 dozen buns.
Have you ever thought about expanding into a bigger operation?
No way. Most of the places are all out for that almighty dollar, but I never thought that way. I thought about the people. Because a lot of these people don't have these big wages where all they want is the money. And I never thought about it that way. I just thought about it as doing something for the public.
Though she's cut down her workday now to but 10 or 12 hours, she has no thought of abdicating her throne retirement. That's a comforting thought to any of us lucky enough to have sunk a tooth into her fare.
I'll never leave Alaska. I don't know what it is about Alaska. I guess 'cause you go outside and nobody talks to you. If you go into a place, nobody talks to you up here. It makes me feel good inside. Just be down here among the people. I do. I have a big family.
Yeah, she's been taking care of the working people in Anchorage for a long time. As long as she's here, we'll be here.
Johnny Appleseed may not have gotten this far north, but we Alaskans have our own version in a latter-day Apple Annie. Anna Dobbs of Anchorage has introduced these succulent, crisp, rosy, and golden-hued wonders to a market long starved for truly fresh, natural fruit. Anna says it all began 10 years ago, when she could find little good fruit to eat up here. Therefore, she started her own business, Midnight Sun Natural Foods. She began air freighting produce and fruit and delivering it to the doorsteps of customers. Her goods were so much juicier, crisper, and fresher than the store-bought variety that her reputation quickly spread widely. Today, Anna and her husband John preside over a business that's thriving despite the economic downturn. She sells a wide variety of produce, but New York apples are still her favorite. That prejudice perhaps is due to her upbringing in rural upstate New York, where, having been born there myself, I can attest can be found several apple varieties which put to shame most of those found west of the Mississippi.
How did you get hung up on apples?
Well, when I was a little girl, every Saturday morning I'd wake up at 7 and go to the farmer's market with my mom, and she'd just buy bushels of plums and apples and peaches, and that would be our treats. That's what we would have instead of cookies or...
Tell me a little bit about your efforts to preserve some of the old-time type of apples that are no longer readily available.
We treasure old wines, and I think we should also treasure and hold on to the seeds and the varieties of apples that Jefferson and Washington ate in their time. We're losing the kinds of apples that Jefferson ate that our families could try. At one point in America, 4,000 different kinds of apples were grown. We're down to about 150, and 5 of them have 70% of the market. There are people trying to save the seeds, but I want to take it one step further so that your family and mine can try these different apples instead of just reading about them in a book.
Everyone, of course, has heard of wine tastings, but Anna brings together a group of friends and faithful customers for a gastronomical experience of a different sort. For their delight and edification, she holds apple tastings.
This is the Macoun, cross between a Macintosh and a black twig. Black twig is a heirloom or antique apple that you can't really find anymore commercially. This is the last Mutsu within 5,000 miles of us. It's a cross between a Japanese Indo and a Gold Delicious. And it's very sweet and very crisp. This is an Ida Red, cross between a Jonathan and a Wagner. It's very tart, very crisp, and very flowery. Mmm.
Now, I can feel this working on my teeth.
What and how many are the steps from tree to table in your particular operation?
Well, in the case of the apples, we actually go back there and I get to pick out which trees I want. And they box them up. We load them into the air container. The container gets trucked down to JFK in New York City and flown up here directly on Northwest Airlines. And then we usually do that at the end of our trip, jump on the plane and meet the apples up here and unload them.
And how short a period of time, by contrast?
12 hours.
Compared to how much on the barge and truck?
3 weeks to a month.
3 weeks to a month, I see.
Produce is picked so green to come up here that the natural vitamins are robbed from the fruit because it's picked too green.
Tell me, are you doing anything to promote local producers here in Alaska?
A bunch of farmers in Palmer invited me out this summer and I toured their farms and they asked me what I wanted them to grow.
Anna is one of those who like to use product which has quality. Mm-hmm. Product which been growing without pesticides. And what is Anna doing is very good for Alaskans.
I love what I do, and my business is really based on service and delivering, and I find that works best.
Hi, Anna. Come on in. What kind of apples are you bringing?
You, for the last 3 years now, I believe, have been conducting a so-called Apple Bake-Off, an Apple Festival.
We've really made it up as we've gone along, but it's really been a wonderful event. We have pies, cakes, pastries, non-desserts. We have a children's category, a professional category, most Spenardian, because we started this in Spenard.
It is good. Yeah, it's good. Not bad.
A lot of people make this comment, or this comment comes up consistently, and that is, oh, it reminds me of my childhood. And that gives us extra pleasure to be able to do that. Varieties of apples that people just don't come in contact with. And it's a whole different taste. It's a whole different experience. And that is very gratifying to be able to offer it.
And if Anna has her way, the antique apples of today will fill the fruit bins of tomorrow.
Like the Johnny Appleseed of yesteryear, she'll plant the seeds of future enjoyment. This is a story about my nearest neighbor to the north. He lives about 40 miles away and some 2,000 feet above our Lake Clark home. In between are some pretty sizable peaks and valleys. And the only way in and out is by air. That is, unless you're Dick Prenicky. Dick came here some 20 years ago and built this tiny cabin and has lived in harmony with his surroundings ever since. Here we go. He's getting out. Here comes another one. Do the birds and the beasts around here accept you as one of their own by now?
Boy, I've got a lot of friends. Man, there's more cow moose know me than you can imagine. My golly, when I've got cows that lay and chew their cud with the calf right beside them, lay with me 20 feet away. You know, and that's pretty good, I think, when they'll trust you that much. And a fox, I got a fox that'll come in the cabin if I open the door, but that's not a very good idea, I don't think, because I don't think that fox's house broke.
When did you build the cabin?
Well, I've been looking at a lot of cabins, and I'd like to build one of my own and see if I could build a cabin. And so what I did it for was to make a movie of it and take pictures anyway, so. Yeah, it's pretty popular, too. It's in the movie, One Man's Alaska, you know.
How did you happen to document its building? Did you at that time contemplate a book that did emerge in the form of One Man's Wilderness?
Well, I had a friend that was an English teacher, and he was working on Kodak same time I was, and he wanted to be a writer. So finally I told him that, well, you take my journals and see what you can do. And I thought, what I thought he had in mind was just an idea for a book, you know. But as it turned out, why, pretty much a lot of it is my writing, you know, so that's how that came. Yeah, I used an automatic timer on the camera, on the movie camera and on the still camera. It took 10 days to put up the heavy logs, the wall logs and the gables and the purlin logs, and then it took another 10 days. I had intended to use plywood on the roof, but then I thought, well, let's go timber all the way. So I searched out a batch of poles and took 100 poles and a lot of searching to get them to make the roof. And time I peeled them and got them here and everything and on. It took another 10 days. So there was 20 days to do.
Dick has given new meaning to the expression simplified self-sufficiency. In today's world of electrical contrivances and so-called modern conveniences, why did you choose to live in a manner that some might think most inconvenient?
If I had electricity here, I'd certainly need a generator, power generator, and got to have fuel, and well, it's just not worth it, I don't think. This is, and then I wanted to live it like Alaska, like you think of Alaska, you know, not like Seattle or Los Angeles or whatever, but live it like the old guys did, you know, as much as you can. I like it a little bit frosty when I start cutting wood. I got wood that would burn for 2 winters that I haven't used since I built the cabin, because I cut it and then I didn't use it. I just kept adding more. I should use it and make a new stockpile, but still, there it is, waiting to be used. And I say, well, when I break a leg, then I'll use it.
Do you make a point of seeking out some form of exercise each day, or does the exercise seem to seek you out instead?
I think exercise, especially as you get older, is very important, because I think that's where a lot of people break down. They quit, and if you don't lose it, you're going to lose it, you know.
No, boy, that hurts. It really does. Threw that darn thing out. What about diet? What foods do you eat primarily?
Don't have a lot of meat to eat, I'll tell you. But enough, though. I've canned hams and all that sort of thing, but I eat lots of potatoes and lots of beans. I used to think navy beans are the only thing, but somebody gave me 100 pounds of pinto, so, boy, I think pintos are pretty good now. Just plain old cooking, that's what I like.
You ever get a great desire to go into town?
Never did. No, always had plenty to do, to cutting wood and writing letters, and I find if you get out and go someplace, boy, that cabin looks pretty good to you when you come back. The cabin's your best friend, especially in the wintertime.
Just what is it about living out here that you find so appealing?
Well, it's not complicated. It's there's no problems here. You know, you can go on and on and on, and there's just no problem. That's the big attraction. You can go and go and go and not bump into people every time you turn around. A lot of times it's in the wintertime when the snow comes deep, and even when it's very cold, I'll snowshoe up above timberline just to stand up there and look down, and it's just silent as death because there's no sound. All you hear is a raven or a magpie or something like that. But you just stand up there and listen for a sound, but there is none. It's just completely silent.
Well, neighbor, good to see you again. Yeah. And you take care of yourself. Don't chase girls or anything, and we'll see you somewhere down the trail, okay?
Here, Jay, I got a little something I want to give to you.
Oh, for gosh sakes.
I call this the Miller Creek Grizzly.
Well, that's a dandy, by golly. What, a piece of moose
I'd like
antler?
for you to have it. Yeah, this is moose antler.
Oh, boy. That's sharper than all get out. Well, thank you very much, old boy. I appreciate it. In One Man's Wilderness, Dick Prenneke wrote about the world he lives in and the world he left behind. He said, "I have found that some of the simplest things have given me the most pleasure. They didn't cost me a lot of money either. They just worked on my senses." Did you ever pick very large blueberries after a summer rain? Walk through a grove of cottonwoods open like a park and see the blue sky beyond the shimmering gold of the leaves? Pull on dry woolen socks after you've peeled off the wet ones. Or come in out of the sub-zero and shiver yourself warm in front of a wood fire. The world is full of such things. I have no doubt that to others I'm an oddball in many ways, he wrote. The Lord waited a little too long to put me on one of his worlds. I don't like the look of progress, if that's what it's called. I would have liked the beginnings better. That's why this place has taken hold of me. And finally he said, I wonder what the caribou thinks about. Is his brain just a blank as he lies there blinking in the sun and chewing his cud? I wonder if he feels as I do, that this small part of the world is enough to think about.